How do you build, let's say, hybrid human AI teams? And how does that impact the way you lead such a team? And you have machines, being hyper effective, able to work 24/7, never ill, don't stop working, can be in multiple meetings at the same time. How do you manage that, right?
It's super important that data is collected and stored and protected. Describe that to the average listener. What are some things that might be really cool to know on that front?
Maybe we can go to, I don't know, a 4-day work week, but it's also really dependent on what type of organization do you want to be.
We also know this from the numbers, right? So mental health issues are rising and on an all-time high. People never switch off. You have social media, so you're constantly comparing. There's a lot of rage going on. And you already mentioned being more empathetic as a leader. Is there any other advice that you would give aspiring leaders of today, other than being kind and mindful?
AI can do a lot. You can train it positively, but it doesn't have a conscience. And that is really the prerogative of us as humans, and that will always stay. That's the essence of the transformation, basically, that we have to execute.
Today I'm joined by Caroline Tervoort, partner HR transformation at KPMG. We are, as you can see, at the KPMG offices, so thanks a lot for having me today. You've had quite the career at KPMG, also some stints outside KPMG, both in the HR business, but also in the advisory business, now as a partner. Yeah. Maybe you could introduce yourself in your own words, and then we can get to know you a bit better.
Yeah, so that's a very big question. But indeed, lots of years basically in the HR domain, but switched sides of the table every now and then. And I think mainly because of the fact that I was brought up in an entrepreneurial family. So my father is a child of a baker, and we've had lots of experience also in the bakery. So that type of, I would say, youth personality and youth competencies I've brought with me over the course of my career. So always wanting to do something different, build out things, see opportunities, and look at how we could, translate that to something meaningful. In this case, in organizations, instead of baking beautiful bread or all kinds of pastries.
That's nice. That's really exciting too. That you brought something from your youth to your career later on.
Yeah.
Do you have some examples of how that still comes into your day-to-day work?
Well, as I said, it's more about the entrepreneurial spirit, which I brought from from my youth into my career. And I think it's also something that you typically don't really. It's not a conscious decision. It's what you reflect on if you're in your career, right? So after 10, 15 years, it struck me that in terms of how I do my work and what type of choices I make, this entrepreneurial spirit is always one of the elements in it. And one of the examples is that, in my, I would say, first life at KPMG, I had a very long and prosperous career. I could make moves quite fast. And at a certain point in time, I was asked to make the switch to the advisory business and set up a practice which was not there yet, the people and change practice. And that is, I think, a nice example of just finding an opportunity that excites you and thinking, okay, maybe I've never done it before, but I think that I can do it in the spirit of Pippi Longstocking, and just do it. And I think that typifies the choices that I make more often, and also that I made after that particular example. In just finding opportunities which excite, and just take the plunge and see what happens.
Yeah, and because if we dive into that, you were indeed at KPMG in multiple HR roles.
Yeah.
Then you went into the people practice, or you set it up, basically.
Yeah.
Then I believe you also had some stints outside KPMG. You came back as CHRO at some point.
Yeah.
You also do work for SER Topvrouwen.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff going on right now at the moment. And now you're back into the partner really advising customers.
Yeah.
Where do you feel most at home? Is that advising customers, being in the business yourself? Or did you really comment to yourself as the CHRO. I think you were voted CHRO of the year at some point as well.
True. So I think it's not or because if it would be that, it would feel like it's too narrow, I would say. And I always try to again see the opportunities in things. So for me, it's end. I take a lot of excitement and pride in let's say the knowledge and the experience that I've built up over the course of the years in the HR domain. And I think I've been able to take on beautiful assignments and challenges, big transformations, integrations, separations, and I could really make an impact on the business, which I think is super rewarding because it's now you see it materialize under your hands, and that's great. And you're always very into the conundrums of the organization, and you can touch everything, and that's beautiful. You can really make an impact. But being on the other side of the table allows you to have, let's say, this helicopter view and be at the forefront of all the developments. In this case, in the let's say the people in the workforce domain, in enterprise developments and transformations. For now, one being AI, which is a very big one, affecting not only the HR function but the entire workforce. And when you're in a CHRO capacity, the thing that you do is you have, let's say, this helicopter view, and you manage and lead all the different domains, but really diving into the depth of what's the development and what do I take from it, and translate that into, let's say, your own practice. You have little time to do that, and that's the beauty of what I can do now. I can really, I hope, surprise and delight clients with these new insights. Which I'm at the forefront of. So the combination is what makes it so beautiful, so to say, and why it excites me.
Yeah, I can imagine that it's super powerful to have had that experience, or to have built that experience as a CHRO, as an HR leader, and to now advise companies, because you can distinguish theory from practice, and you know.
Yeah, and I've been there, right? So I can also relate to the challenges that CHROs or executives have, because I've been there as well. And not that it's exactly the same, of course, because every transformation and every person and every organization is different. But I do have the ability to understand what's going on, either in the dynamics of the organization or within a person itself, and the challenges that you face. And that's, for me, it's really rewarding to have those two experiences.
Yeah, I can imagine. And maybe let's set the stage a bit more. We're at KPMG right now, one of the big four.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of change in the world of work at the moment, also at the big four.
Absolutely.
How would you explain what KPMG does right now to potential customers or potential employees? And how do you see the company develop going forward?
Yeah, so indeed, there's lots of change which has already been, let's say, impacting the organization over the course of the past years. And under the influence of the transformations like sustainability and AI and digitization, you see the changes happening even faster than before, especially when you look at developments of digitization and AI. What we see, typically, of course, we provide services to our clients when it comes to assurance, right? So that's the whole financial assurance, but also IT assurance domain. But we also give lots of advice to all types of clients on strategy setting, but also on operations or change management challenges. So that's really the full breadth of everything that you can encounter in an organization. And especially when you look at the assurance domain, what we've seen is a very fast pickup of automation of the entire audit process, and let's say, I would say, a far-reaching impact of AI as well. So there's lots of AI applications used in running a very efficient and effective AI-driven audit process. And you can imagine that that's got quite an impact on what type of skills the auditor of today, but also of the future, needs to have, right? And that's significantly changed compared to, well, I don't 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago, and that goes very, very fast. So that's one thing. And also in the consulting business, we see that typically tools like Copilot, we have our own internal OpenAI, ChatGPT, all those tools that enhance the personal productivity of our people makes it possible for them to go faster into the more, let's say, exciting and complex tasks than number crunching and spending hours on Excel files or PowerPoint presentations or whatever. And so that is a big change compared to, well, not so long ago. That goes very fast. And we are also rethinking what that, let's say, profile of the future is. Because we also see that when you look at our vacancies, for instance, one of the elements that's now in there is that you are AI savvy, right? Which was not there, I would say, 1.5 years ago. So one of the examples that it goes very, very fast in our world.
Yeah, I can imagine. And does it already result in differences in terms of hiring? Graduate hiring was a big topic a couple of months back.
Yeah.
Companies pulling back on that front, on others not so much.
Yeah, so our conviction is that we will always need humans to do the work. So one of the things that goes to show for that is the fact that last year we actually increased in our numbers of FTE, right? So we grew bigger instead of smaller, which is let's say by conviction.
Yeah.
Because we feel that you need also your younger generation, but you don't need to, you should not project your old style way of working onto the younger generation, right? You want them to use the tools that are modern and new and move the content of the job instead of looking at how many FTEs would I need. The content of the job is changing, and that's what you need to manage. So we continue to hire also the younger graduates. That's really by conviction, but we have to double down on changing, let's say, what they need to do, so their responsibilities and their tasks, and that is the job that's going on at the very moment. But as our campaign says, and then in Dutch, het blijft mensenwerk. It remains human work. It's a very bad translation, but you know what I mean. That's
I like
what it is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
In Dutch it sounds better, but
Yeah.
it's but it's still strong.
You know, it's really even when you increase AI and working with AI, you still need people to judge the outcome of AI, because we also know that the reliability of the thing is not always what it should be. So you always need that personal judgment, but also the moral judgment, because AI can do a lot. You can train it positively, but it doesn't have a conscience. And that is really the prerogative of us as humans, and that will always stay.
Yeah.
Right? So that is what we believe in, and that is what you have to change. That's the essence of the transformation, basically, that we have to execute.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's also interesting because in order for a human to judge whether AI delivers, you need to have knowledge of the matter at hand.
Absolutely.
And that's also always something when we, for instance, write content ourselves for a post or something. It's very easy to write ChatGPT fluff.
Yeah.
Like it sounds great, but it doesn't really get to the essence. And I can imagine that, especially in consulting, that can be a big challenge.
Yeah, and you see it in the applications that we get. You see instantly when it is AI written, because it all writes the same, right? It all looks the same, feels the same wording. You can see it with your human eyes right away that it's not a human flawed letter. So that's also what we believe, and I believe personally, is that in the near future, because everything can be made perfect by AI, what will differentiate us from others is the flaws that we have. So our personality and the uniqueness that we bring, which is again superhuman, right? Instead of super AI.
Yeah.
So that goes along with that. Yeah.
It's interesting because you want people to be AI savvy. So you expect
Absolutely.
them to probably check the letter of application or the resume with AI. On the other hand, you want to discover who they are, what makes them human, or what makes them tick. That's a conundrum. I don't have the answer to it yet, but yeah.
But no, we are finding that out as we go as well, right?
Yeah.
So we of course keep the human conversations in the process, but how we will deal with that is also something that we will experience on the go and then adjust. So I don't have that perfect answer neither. But finding our way in AI in our daily operational processes, that's core and key at the moment. All organizations are let's say assessing that and adjusting to that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you need to do a lot of explaining to potential customers or to customers about what the consultant of the future does? And there was this buzz initially with AI popping up that the entire consultancy business is dead. Nobody needs to make slides anymore. I can just ask ChatGPT for a report and I'm more or less done. I can imagine that you get these questions and that you need to reinvent yourself as well.
The value of a consultant is not the many hours they spend on producing slides or Excel files. The value is in the judgment and the outcome of that work. So the fact that you now have tools which can number crunch with the speed of light frees up time to do actually what people are good at and what they were trained for and educated for, because we've got very bright minds working for us, which have to or had to work, let's say, on very tedious tasks for quite a long time before it became fun, so to say.
Yeah, and before it became
we can
valuable.
Can go much faster. So the essence of what we bring should resonate with clients in that they have much more added value because of the bright insights that they get, instead of having to spend a lot of money on number crunching and producing presentations.
Yeah.
And yes, we have to explain that to clients, and we also have to be very honest in the fact that AI is used and that it can help in effectiveness, right? So that we would need less hours for the number crunching part, but we would spend more hours or more time on delivering actually that added value and the dialogue again with the client, which is human.
Yeah, and does it also transition a bit more to implementation, or does it stay more in the realm of the theoretical, the report, and now it's up to you? Okay.
The type of advice that we give, you mean?
Yeah.
That's really both. So we give that strategic advice, but we are also very hands-on. So that implementation part is also absolutely, let's say, key in the services that we deliver. Yeah.
And if you're talking to potential employees that consider working at KPMG, I can imagine that it's quite exciting to be part of this transition that you just described. Have you materially adjusted your messaging to them? You already referenced the beautiful Dutch campaign.
So that continues to be the key part of KPMG, right? People is all we have, and that of course the technology part will play a bigger role, especially when it comes to our own internal processes and how we reinvent our own internal processes, because that for sure also will be reimagined because of AI. And that's a fundamental rethinking of how we are now managing our organization, right? Because now it's very functional driven, but AI doesn't think like functions, right? So that crosses right across all those functional processes. So you have to fundamentally rethink how you run your business, but that's internally. And when it comes to providing the services to our clients, what will set us apart is, on the one hand, our unique data that we will be able to provide because of all the experiences that we have worldwide with our clients, which makes that a unique data set, which is not comparable to even the other big three, because that's made up out of our experiences. That is a unique matter, let's say, for the future. And the other part continues to be our people. So we really need to double down on making sure that they know how to handle these AI tools, but on the other hand also be the best version of themselves, because that's what sets them apart from a machine.
Yeah. Do you have, just think out loud, you of course have these trajectories to become a registered accountant.
Yeah.
Do you foresee similar paths for AI literacy? Do you have certain trainings already in place for
we have an extensive curriculum, which is by the way up until the partner level, making sure that also our leaders are absolutely AI literate. And that's mandatory, right? So every partner and director has to go through what we call a digital MBA to make sure that they understand what AI and digitization is all about, what it does, how reliable it is, how unreliable it is, and how they can assess the quality of the work that their team produces. Because if you don't, it's really an issue in terms of what you deliver to the client. So you better double down on your own knowledge, right? That's where it all begins. And we have to lead from the front. So that's a really a big call to our own leaders to step up the game on that part, because otherwise, that becomes a risk. And then we've got a whole curriculum for the rest of the organization, which is also based on, let's say, the necessary proficiency level that you need. Because sometimes it's enough to just understand what AI is all about and how it impacts your work. And for other people in more IT-driven or data-driven domains or privacy domains, they need to have more insights, or they need to be trained on machine learning or cybersecurity, or they have to have more depth into their profession, basically. And that's all tailored to the different, let's say, expertise areas that we have.
Yeah, you need to be an expert in some fields, and otherwise you need to be
so you have
sufficient
the
in your
foundation
knowledge.
level, you have the more proficient level, and then you have the expert level, and that's all, let's say, sliced and diced compared to, or in line with the type of job that you do.
And if we bring it back to you personally, and I have to think of the entrepreneurial spirit, the young girl in the bakery, is this a very exciting time for you to
it's a very exciting time,
reinvent yourself to some extent? Is that also how you experience it?
Yeah, and it's about reinventing myself, because I also have to step up in using AI and being critical on the output of AI. But it's also very exciting because we have now seen the developments going very fast. Personal effectiveness with Copilot and these ChatGPT tools is there. There is also a lot of research that it's more, let's say, common now. 70-80% of people use AI in their work. So that is sort of done. And now the next phase is, how do you run that into your processes? As I discussed just now, it's a fundamental redesign of how we work together. So that functional way of working is changing, which is a very big organizational transformation challenge, right? Because basically you go from functions, you switch the matrix, and you go to value change. And that is a fundamental rethinking of how you shape your workforce, how you let's say, AI, a machine, work together with humans. And that's what I'm at the forefront of. So how do you build, let's say, hybrid human AI teams? And how does that impact the way you lead such a team? How does it impact well-being, for that matter? Because if you take out all the slack in your job, and you have machines, being hyper effective, able to work 24/7, never ill, don't stop working, can be in multiple meetings at the same time. How do you manage that, right? So that's a complete, also from a social and let's say a leadership perspective, a complete rethink of how we manage the world of work. And that's what I can be part of. And that's super exciting.
Shall we dive into that a bit more? Maybe can you give me some examples of, let's say, your average listener? Maybe I might be one of them, who doesn't really understand how this impacts the actual work, or your 9-to-5 job, or you already mentioned being organized differently. I can imagine that it's super important that data is collected and stored and protected perfectly, because a robot, or AI only can function if that's in place perfectly.
Yeah.
Well, how would you describe that to the average listener? Or what are some things that might be really cool to know on that front?
Well, maybe good to then mention an experiment that we're doing with the University of Amsterdam. That is with one of my colleagues who is a professor there and also a partner at KPMG, Sander Klaus. And what they experimented with was a company completely run by agents, no human. And it is a fail for now. So we learned a lot, because what we actually saw is that if you build an organization like we as humans do, right? So you've got, for instance, the profile of a CEO, and you just say, okay, the CEO, I now script as an agent, and that agent goes to do some things and do things for themselves. It doesn't work because it's too wide of a context, which it's still statistics, right? An agent may feel like a person, but it is still a large language or a small language model which predicts the next word. It's nothing more not than that, actually. So if you don't script that, if you don't give a very narrow and concise context and task to such an agent, it goes haywire very fast, especially if you let them talk to one another, because you add new data. So it's statistics on statistics. Yeah. And if you ask a mathematician, that's a recipe for disaster.
80% times 80% is only 64% accuracy.
So there you go, right? Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So what the researchers call coffee chat is then happening, and it goes haywire real fast. It's a completely different conversation than you want the thing to have, which is also, by the way, has an impact on sustainability because it's very energy rich, so to say. So you have to also mind that, but that's a sidestep. So if you program, so to say, agents as a human would, it doesn't work. You cannot make that reliable. So you have to, that's what the researchers also saw, you have to think differently. You have to start with a process and then use different types of AI, which are very narrowly scripted with a very specific context. And you have to put them after one another without having them talk to each other, so enriching that with data. And they call it, let's say, the army of micro agents. They are functioning for that specific task, and then they shut down. And they come alive again if they have that specific task they're requested to execute again. And that keeps it clean, and that makes sure that you can then give up to the human some sort of product that needs to be assessed. So there is the human on the loop before giving it back to that agentic process. So, well, it's a lot of text, but if you start to think about that, it's a complete fundamental rethink of how we work, right? Yeah. The first one is human first, and that becomes quickly unreliable. And the other is AI first, but with the human on the loop, not in the loop, because then you frustrate the process, but on the loop to assess the outcome. Yeah. Then it is perfect, and let's say a perfect harmony.
Yeah, because if you put the human in the loop, they are. They might screw up all the data flows and
the data flows, but also inefficiencies, because as I discussed, an agent can be in multiple meetings at the same time. Yeah. Once you put a human in there,
that's a limiting factor.
They cannot be anywhere else. Yeah. That's a limiting factor. Yeah. So so again, it's also about that changes the essence of the job of the human as well significantly. Yeah. It's all about assessing the outcome of what that process produces and giving it back to the process to have it run its course, and that's also a complete rethink compared to how we now execute our jobs, because we sit in all those meetings, but basically we will have much less meetings because that whole process is run by agents who do that for you and are in all those meetings. They have all that data, and you're actually, as a human, very limited in collecting all that data. You can never be the agent because they have it all under the tip of their digital hands. And you don't, because you're human. Yeah.
And if we extrapolate from that, because first of all, I think it makes sense, and you need to rethink work from the ground up, from like a first principle basis.
When you want to use it in your processes and your operational processes, yes.
Instead of just here's a human, do what the human did, that doesn't work. And if we all adopt that new way of working, KPMG has done a lot of projects everywhere, and now everybody is on board. Mm-hmm. What does it mean for the average work week, for an average work day? Are there some thoughts that you have on that front already, or is this too far ahead?
Well, it goes very fast, and we don't know everything yet. So some things are also just assumptions. And
let's think out loud together.
And maybe dreaming a little bit, maybe. Yeah. But so what will change for sure? is how the job will be, the essence of the job, which is much more on. It's much more brainy and much more about critical thinking, critical judgment, creativity, everything that's got to do with inspiration, interaction, and decision making. That's the prerogative of the human. Much less than the number crunching part, right? Evaluating data and analysis. That's all being done by the humans. So you could imagine that there's sort of a buddy maybe that everybody has that does that. Number crunching and that transactional work, where the person then assesses the outcome and brings that to the table in a meeting or brings that further into an agentic process. So you will have, let's say, this dance between your agents and yourself in how you work. Yes, maybe we can go to, I don't know, a 4-day work week, but it's also really dependent on what type of organization do you want to be, right? Some want to give it back to people, for instance, in a 4-day work week. But you could also think about, giving it back to growth of the company or investing in sustainability, whatever. So you have to think about what's the purpose of your company and how you want to give back the productivity gains that you can have because of the fact that AI is helping you out. So that's another area that I think we need to be very mindful of. And the other one, which I briefly mentioned, is really that well-being part, because cognitive overload is really something that I can worry about if I look at the impact that AI has on, let's say, the brainy part, because when you don't have any slack anymore and you cannot, let's say, recover from all that thinking, basically you fry your brain. So it's not only about that physical fitness that we need to mind, but very quickly, we now need to be very much invested in that, let's say, brain fitness and making sure that we can recover. Yeah. And maybe a good example, which we have already for a couple of years in assurance, is that after this peak period that we have, especially when you have the large accounts and you have to audit them.
The busy season.
Yeah, you have the busy season and the hard closes, so to say. That is sometimes or often a very intense period leading up to that hard close and delivering the report in time. And what we have is these recovery days. So planners are, let's say, forbidden, although it's not forbidden per se, but they have the option to plan 2 days free before heading into a new project, so that the people who have worked their asses off.
Butts off.
Can have the time to relax and recuperate and relax their brains and move into the new project with a fresh mind. And I think those are types of examples that we will need to think about much more in the future. How do we make sure that we don't get a very high increase in mental illness because of the fact that people have that cognitive overload, having no rest at all?
Yeah.
And the other downside of that is that what we see as well is that the critical thinking part is still very much lacking or is actually quite bad. So if you don't invest in that critical thinking part, it might also be that people become a little bit lazy because AI does everything, right? And if you take it for face value, you've got a compliance issue potentially, because that thing can hallucinate. We've seen examples of that, and then you bring something into the world which is just false. So that is a very big risk that we should consider. But also, again, for the health of our people, we need to make very much sure that we invest in in keeping them fresh, so that their creativity can prosper and that we get the best out of them.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I hadn't thought of that before, but I do have some real world examples on that front where, of course, we went to phones and laptops where you can always be on call, you can always do work now. Yeah. But with AI, that's even more so. When I'm in the car and I commute home, I from time to time switch on the chat mode of or voice mode of ChatGPT,
and then I start talking.
And then I start talking, and then I have basically this colleague, which which I think through problems and I hadn't really thought about that as being switched on even more so than I used to be, because before doing this I would maybe listen to a podcast or some music or unwind. Yeah. So there's another opportunity for you to really stay in that. And the question or the answer always ends with a question from the AI. Is that all satisfactory, or would you like me to?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's super easy to stay locked in and switched on.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a challenge that I can relate to.
That's
and
a great example indeed.
Yeah. So that's and apart from AI, because we've been talking about AI for a bit, and I can imagine that this is one of the main things that customers ask you.
Yeah, there's lots and lots of conversations about that. Yeah.
And are there also, we also have some demographic challenges, aging workforce. Is that something? Are there other trends or themes that you see companies dealing with or planning for?
Depending on the sector, because there's differences. Obviously, the labor market developments is another area which is being talked about a lot. By the way, AI also has a big influence on that labor market challenge. So that is a big topic. The aging population as well, but also the younger generation. And especially, well, again, the multiple transformations are hitting the younger generation maybe even harder than the older generation or the more mature generation. So that is an area that we have lots of talks about as well, because, you know, especially the youngest, they have grown up with all the mega trends that are out there, from a COVID pandemic to wars to social outrage, and they bring that
TikTok.
into TikTok. You know, everything that's going on in the world is under the tip of their fingers, and it's very daunting. They are also very vocal about it. So when you have to manage that, especially when you're working in an international environment, you can imagine that is quite a topic. It can be quite a topic because there can be lots of sensitivities that you have to manage. And even though you don't take a political stance as an organization, you cannot close your eyes for it because it's there. So you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
What I talk about a lot with our clients is actually, yes, AI, digitization, and we have to be literate. But on the other hand, there's this very big ask, basically, to be as empathetic as you can be as a leader, because of all the things that are going on in the world, and that this younger generation is especially affected by. The older ones as well, but they've grown up with the idea, you know, the world is ending, we need to save the world, whereas the older generations have been much more grown up with I don't know, rebuilding the economy or rebuilding the country after the Second World War. That's also a very maybe important way of growing up, but with this youngest generation, it's everything, right? It's and that if you have to carry that burden, you can imagine that feels quite heavy. Yeah, and how do you deal with that in an organizational setting? Because you cannot say, well, it's not there, and I don't pay any attention to it. That's just not possible.
No, and I can imagine. I think you described it very well. I think we also know this from the numbers, right? So mental health issues are rising and on an all-time high. Suicide rates are on an all-time high. People never switch off. You have social media, so you're constantly comparing. There's a lot of rage going on. Even though on a lot of statistics we're actually doing better as a species than ever before, but it gets drowned out. Yeah. And you already mentioned being more empathetic as a leader. Are there any other advice? Is there any other advice that you would give aspiring leaders, leaders of today, other than being kind and mindful, that they can take with them?
Well, I think kind and mindful is a very important one. Maybe even the essence next to, I would say, ethics. So really tune into your moral compass, because it was already very important to do so. But with the coming of AI and the fact that basically everything is possible, the operative question is, should it be, right? That it's possible is one thing, but should this be? And that is a moral question. And it's all about integrity. So I think for leaders now and in the future, that part, the moral compass, ethics, is what we need to double down on. That is the core of what we have to do and have to be, next to being kind and mindful. But again, deeply human, because of the fact that there's so much possible that it narrows down to who are you? What do you stand for? And what is right? Right? Even if the light is not on, do you still choose to do the right thing? I think that is the core of now in the near future.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I'm thinking about ending it right there, but some follow up questions, because I'm also thinking about the moment where we are in right now as Europe, in a world where we need to be perhaps more competitive than we used to be, hold up ourselves, our own.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of incentives there to focus on growth, which is super important.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think it's also a world in which, because of all the possibilities, there's a lot of uncertainty. Whereas you mentioned the generations after the war, where everything was moving in the right direction. They called it the end of history in the 90s, right after the Cold War.
Yeah.
Now we're full on back in history, if you will. Is that something that you discuss as a leadership at KPMG as well, or you amongst peers?
Well, of course, that's a topic, a very actual and let's say a live topic, and it's got multiple phases because if you are in an international setting, it hits you directly. Not only because of the financial or the commercial side of things with tariffs and supply chain challenges, and but also because of the fact that you are working internally together, right? And as I just said, with the younger generation, bringing in the tensions that they experience when they come from communities where countries are at war with each other, that also goes for leadership, right? And you are one company, but you cannot overlook the fact that these changes are there and also sensitivities are there. So we have to have that dialogue between us as well, and it's a very active dialogue, not only within KPMG, but especially also when I look at the client side and the conversations that I have there. This is the talk of the day, so to say, also because it shifts on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So the talks that we have is how can you become more resilient as an organization to make sure that even though things shift, you still have that sense of control as a company, that you know what to tackle or which actions to take when something hits you again, right? And it can move. It's a moving target. It can move on a daily basis. So that's more what we see with the clients. Which we also see is that they are managing multiple transformations at the same time. So being agile, making sure that you have different scenarios is core and key to what they now have to do, and that's what you try to support them with as well. So that's a big chunk of the conversation. How do you become resilient or stay resilient when all these different shifting panels hit you?
Yeah, on both an economic or a business side of things and a personal level.
And exactly, how does that impact your people as well?
Yeah. And if we bring it back to you to close it all off, you've made some considerable steps, of course, in your career. One of the things that I admire as well, or I think is inspiring for a lot of women, is to hear from other women in leadership positions. Used to be a very hot topic, DEI. Now maybe it drowned out a bit. Is that something that's still talked about a lot on the in the workplace with customers? Has it indeed become less of a topic?
It's still a topic, of course. And also that is part of the bigger, let's say, discussion on what is diversity and inclusion exactly, and how should we call it, or what can we call it. But when I look at my own trajectory, I think what's most important is that we run the risk of assimilating too much. And what I've tried to do over the course of my career is stay, let's say, unique, which is also sometimes, let's say, the harder road, because you are frowned upon, or people think, oh, what's that for type of girl? But I really wanted to be me and not assimilate to let's say, the male way of working. So it brings about, or it brings with that you that you are, let's say, independent enough to say, okay, I am okay. And from that perspective, I want to engage with others and be a kind and a nice and a fun person to be around. And I think that is that's the key that I've tried to stay close to for myself. And if I look at what I've been able to do, I also had help of a lot of, let's say, sponsors, right? You do a lot of things yourself because of the things that you achieve and that you're able to add value with. But at the same time, you also have to have some luck, so to say, some chances that were given to you, and then you have to grab those chances. And I've had multiple times in my career that I got the chance, and then it's also a bit of just go for it and take the plunge, just dare, and say, okay, well, maybe I've not done it before, but I'll just do it because it's fun or whatever. That's also what comes along with that, right? So and I think I tried to do that a couple of times, which paid off, and I had super nice experiences because I just thought, let's do it, we'll see. So that takes a little courage as well, next to let's say the things and the qualities that you have and that you show.
Well, what I like about that is that you bring a bunch of things together. First of all, being humble, acknowledging that you've had opportunities and sponsors, and and that's so critical at the end of the day. But also, again, the entrepreneurial mindset from the girl in the bakery store that saw an opportunity and went for it. Yeah, she is again. And maybe Pippi Longstocking that dives into that. Is that maybe also, if we close off with a lesson, something for perhaps younger listeners who also are ambitious, perhaps younger women that say, wow, that's pretty damn cool. Is that something that you would like to close on that front, or give, or is there anything else that you would give them as a lesson or takeaway?
Yeah, so indeed, stay true to yourself, and don't assimilate. Make sure that you grab the opportunities that are given to you. So also see them, right? Sometimes we don't even see the opportunities which present themselves to you. So be very mindful and open to what's happening around you, and then just take the plunge. I think if you trust yourself and your qualities enough, it will never fail, because even when it fails, you learn a lot about yourself and also what you should not be doing, and it informs you on what you should be doing. So I would always say trust yourself and just take the plunge.
Thank you very much. I think that's a beautiful moment to end on. So now I'm into presenter mode, if you will. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope you enjoyed the conversations as much as I had. If you would like to subscribe, follow, stuff like that, we're in your favorite podcast apps, so please do. And Caroline, thank you so much for all your insights. It was really fun.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.